What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with my best music of 2025 pod. We have 3 top 10 lists to get into here. My top 10 albums of the year, my top 10 songs of the year, and my top 10 K-pop songs of the year. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you thought of these lists. What would be on your list? Let me know how you're feeling about the year in music. And of course, make sure you come back for my top 10 TV shows and top 10 movies of the year lists as well. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See links below. Get the best of 2025 Spotify playlists where songs from all of these albums are featured. Let's get into it. What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with my top 10 albums of 2025. Gonna go through these albums 10 to 1, as well as some honorable mentions at the end. Almost all of these albums I reviewed when they released, so for a longer discussion on any of these albums, of course, make sure you go back and check those out. Going to try and keep it a little bit brief here as we go through the 10 albums, plus those honorable mentions. Also to follow is my top 10 songs of the year. Any artists that I have on my album list will not be on my songs list and vice versa, so make sure you check out those lists as well. In addition to my top 10 songs list, I also have my top 10 K-pop songs list, which also does not have any overlap. So 3 music top 10 lists to celebrate the year in music in 2025. And let's get into it. So coming in at number 10, I have Star from To Hollis. This is an album that I actually didn't review. I listened to this a little bit later in the year when it came out back in April. And to me, To Hollis is probably the best distillation of this really new kind of internet pop sound that has been developing with new Gen Z artists. He has a lot of contemporaries here, but I think To Hollis, his sound is the most interesting to me. Maybe it's the most refined. It's maybe not the most like coarse and edgy. It's certainly gotten a little bit more poppier as he's built up to this official like debut album here. But I think it's pretty cool. There's certainly some cringier lyrics, some certainly young leaning Gen Z type lyrics that are fun. But it comes across to me as pretty genuine, and I enjoy the production on this. I think of songs like Nice or Nerve that really grab me with kind of an honesty to the lyrics, but also just a fun electronic, pop nature to how these songs bounce around. So I'm expecting To Hollis to, continue to rise in fame, honestly. We just saw him at the Marty Supreme after party in New York City. I don't think that's a coincidence. Coming in at number 9 for me is Eusexual from FKA Twigs. I really enjoy FKA Twigs' music. Now, Eusexual wasn't quite as strong as her last work. It did not have a song I liked nearly as much as, say, Tears in the Club from a few years back on that Capri Songs mixtape. But I continue to really respect what she does as being not similar to Hollis, but I guess genre-wise you can maybe loop them into similar places. She makes this very alternative avant-garde style pop. It's definitely hard to pin down. I think her vocals sometimes can be super ethereal, and maybe that goes a step too far. But Eusexual to me still really felt like a pretty cohesive listen, and it's just unlike just about anything that you usually will hear in the year. And I think even a quote lesser work from Twigs is still pretty substantial. That's why I still have it here on my list. And to her credit, she ended up making like a sequel companion album to this Eusexual Afterglow that started as a deluxe, but ended up being so creatively inspired that she really treated it as the follow-up record. So shout out Twigs, still really big fan of hers. And I thought my favorite song from this had to be Childlike Things, with its completely out of nowhere feature from Northwest, aka the daughter of Kim Kardashian and Kanye. That song I think is really fun. I love the energy of that one. Number 8 for me is Mayhem from Lady Gaga. I know, coming into the year, once we knew Gaga was releasing a new album, I was probably expecting to have Mayhem a bit higher on my list than it ended up being. I think it's a strong record. It just didn't have as much revisibility as I was necessarily expecting. That being said, Abracadabra as a, kind of facsimile of Gaga's greatest hits, a la Bad Romance, I think that really works for what it's going for. I think Mayhem, this was kind of a back to the basics record for Lady Gaga in terms of what she's doing vocally, the type of song structures, the type of production on that album. And maybe that was not quite as ambitious for some of her fans. But for me, taking this for what it was, I thought it was still pretty high quality, and I enjoyed it. I just didn't revisit it nearly as much as I expected in the end. Number 7 for me is Tyler, the Creator's Don't Tap the Glass. This was quite the delight and quite the surprise when this released in the summer. Of course, Tyler had only just given us Chromacopia in the fall of 2024, and to get something so different than Chromacopia in such a short amount of time later, I think was pretty exciting. Chromacopia was super conceptual, super dense lyrically. Tyler imbuing once again another persona on the mic there. And that song had its merits and had some quality to it for sure. It made my top 10 last year. But I actually like Don't Tap the Glass a lot more than Chromacopia because I think the lightness, the looseness of this, which is really more of a mixtape vibe than a traditional album, really lends itself to just Tyler's sensibilities as this really amusing and charming enigmatic figure. And think of the virality that followed Sugar on My Tongue, right? That could apply to most of the songs on this tape. I think it's just a really fun, upbeat, jubilant listen, and really gets to, I think, kind of like the core to me appeal of Tyler. I've not always loved his super introspective, dense journeys that he's gone down in the past, depending on the album. But this, for me, is just kind of like the perfect evolution of what kind of artist Tyler's become as he's become so multifaceted and so multi-genre. So shout out Tyler for Don't Tap the Glass. Number 6 for me is Virgin from Lorde. This is another album that I maybe wasn't necessarily expecting to be quite as high going in, just because we were coming off the lull that was Solar Power, Lorde's previous record. But thankfully, Virgin was able to really kind of correct the heading of the ship here and get Lorde back on course. I think the album is quite strong, has some of her deepest and most personal storytelling and songwriting about her own journey, which really grabbed me. And then I think the song What Was That really takes the mantle of like the next great like Lorde anthem. I think that song's tremendous. Well, I don't think Lorde has gotten back to the amazing, perhaps unreachable heights of Melodrama, of course, one of my favorite albums of last decade. Virgin, to me, I think, still really strong record, really speaks to why Lorde is a compelling pop figure and also why she's pretty unique as a pop force as well. So I was really happy with how this one turned out and disappointed that it ended up getting completely blanked by the Grammys, which was a surprise to me. Number 5 for me is Ruby from Jenny. I never expected to love this album as much as I did. I was certainly anticipating it, but this is the first time a K-pop album has actually made my top 10 albums of the year. And now, Jenny's Ruby, it certainly has a lot of Western influence. It's almost exclusively in English, so it's not a pure K-pop album by any means, but of course, Jenny's origins and still status as one of the faces of Blackpink, the biggest girl group in the world, certainly speaks to, I think, the increasing globalization of K-pop music, which we saw elsewhere this year with the success of K-pop Demon Hunters. Ruby, though, really knocked me out and really established itself as the clear strongest of the Blackpink solo albums that came out, in Q1 of this year, because Ruby's a Rihanna album. And I think it's amazing that Jenny was able to really pull something like that off, right? There's just so many moments, so many choices on this album that really resonated with me, whether it's a high-end energy banger like Jenny, whether it's, I think, really capable rap flow and melody on Extra, particularly in the beginning, during Jenny's part before Doechii comes in. Really catchy kind of throwback hip hop bona fides with the IE way up. Absolutely love that song. Use it for a Instagram reel earlier this year, which I'm really proud of. The second single, Zen, actually made my top 10 K-pop songs of the year. I think that was the most impressive visually because it was such an ambitious music video, but also I think sonically really the clearest evocation of Rihanna's sound, Rihanna's vocal delivery on that song. I think it's an album that really exceeded my expectations and I think really said a lot about Jenny's artistry. So really happy with Ruby. I went back to so many of those songs. Number 4 for me is Central C's Can't Rush Greatness. I believe this is Central C's second album, technically, third or fourth when you count the mixtapes. But man, this was one of the first albums, I heard this year. It came out in January, and man, I love this record. I thought this was a complete success. So many songs that I went back to throughout the year. Central C continuing to make good on the promise of him as this really unexpected bridge between UK hip hop and American pop stardom. He's by far the most established UK rapper in the history of American music, and that continues to be the case. And he had a ton of great stuff on this, right? Whether it's CBG with Dave, a fucking banger duet, Try Me with Skepta. There's also a lot of kind of growth songwriting wise with the more introspective stuff like Truth and the Lies featuring Lil Durk or Must Be. I think Sench, he has a certain way about how he raps. There's a certain charisma and style to him. I think you could probably compare his lyrical style to 21 Savage in many regards. But I think it just continues to really work for him. Tons of great songs I liked, including GBP featuring 21 Savage. Of course, Band for Band featuring Lil Baby was one of the big singles, and that's a massive record at this point. I just really enjoy Sench. I think he's just really exciting and continuing to really press smash play every time he puts anything out. So yeah, shout out to Central C. He was my favorite UK hip hop album of the year, of course. I really enjoyed AJ Tracy's work as well. Dave did another, great songwriting feat on his album as well, but the Sench album was kind of the clear best thing for me. Number 3 for me is Lux from Rosalia. I think this Rosalia album, God, it's so hard to talk about because there's so much to it. I did a pretty long review on this album and all the facets of it, the multilingual approach from Rosalia herself, the various genre influences that are here, the saintly concept structuring the album. Rosalia has been one of the most significant figures in pop for several years at this point. Of course, think about Motomami, her previous album, and how landmark that was and what that represented. And she's flipped that on its head for the second time, right? Motomami was such a step forward and subversion from what she had previously done with her native flamenco music in her early work. And then Motomami's, rush towards shaking up the pop paradigm was now replaced once again with what Lux is doing, which genre-wise is quite different. I think the sampling, the orchestral flair, that the variety, song to song, moment to moment, there's so much here to really sit with and process. And I think it was just one of those purely cinematic listening experiences when you sit down and really listen to it, album as track to track. So it was a lock to make the list as soon as I heard it. Please check my review out for more, just because it's an album that there's a lot to say on it. But and please let me know what you thought of Lux, because I think it's an album that really inspires a lot of discussion. Number 2 for me is Fancy That by Pink Panthers. I believe this was my most played album of the year because Pink was my number 1 artist on Spotify this year. But man, for a 30-minute dance record, I couldn't ask for anything more. I love every single song on this album. I've listened to all of them constantly. I think Pink Panthers as a club performer is just kind of note perfect at this point. She knows exactly what her sound is. There's so much great stuff here. So many really fun, high energy moments, but the songs never get dull. They never get boring tempo wise. Pink's delivery, the sampling when you do hear it, the background vocals when you do get them. There's just so much to enjoy with this album. And for something that's so seemingly brief, right? It's like a 30-minute record. I went back and listened to this constantly. I listened to this back to front constantly. Talk about an album that's amazing in the car. I love this record. Been a big fan of Pink. I had her last album in my top 10 that year too. I think she's great. And I think her kind of subversion and finding her place within pop as one of the, more exciting, Gen Z faces in pop has, I think, been pretty established at this point. Even though she's not the most mainstream person yet, which is a bit surprising to me given how successful and massive songs like Pain have become. But I think to me, this was just further confirmation of just why she's so exciting, but also kind of a one of one right now. And of course, Pink would have been my number 1 album of the year quite easily if it wasn't for my actual number 1 album of the year, which of course is Let God Sort 'Em Out by Clips. Pusha T, Malice, absolutely crushed with this record that I went back to all the time. I'm not sure what it says about the year in rap, which I thought was pretty thin and pretty quiet overall, but what does it say that by far the most exciting album that came out this year was from 2 guys in their 50s, But I thought Push and Malice absolutely delivered in every respect with Let God Sort 'Em Out. And there's just a handful of song runs that just are undeniable from them. So Be It, followed by lead single Ace Trumpets, All Things Considered, MTB, TTF, EBITDA, and then FICO. God damn, like you're gonna melt your phone. You know, you're gonna go deaf. Like that's just an untouchable run. And I think these are just incredible bangers. I love the production. My favorite song on this album has changed so many times, right? And I was lucky enough to see the group perform live earlier this year, and the energy in the room, the excitement people had to see Clips in 2025 was really palpable. And I think it really speaks to how well received this album has been. Of course, the promo run for that album, very well established how well that went, right? And it's not that it's just pure coke talk either. You know, Clips really gets into, you know, losing their parents on a song like The Birds Don't Sing. You know, I think there's plenty of great storytelling here, but I think my favorite song has kind of settled on FICO. I think just verse to verse, you know, the way Malice pops in, just the double entendres, the way they can put words together and rap about familiar themes and still be really exciting in the process. I mean, there was really nothing better for me this year than Clips Let God Sort 'Em Out. So we'll get into my honorable mentions in just a second, but first, to recap, here are my top 10 albums of 2025. Number 10, Star from 2 Hollis. Number 9, Eusexua from FKA Twigs. Number 8, Mayhem by Lady Gaga. Number 7, Tyler the Creator's Don't Tap the Glass. Number 6 for me is Virgin from Lorde. Number 5 for me is Ruby from Jenny. Number 4 for me is Central C's Can't Rush Greatness. Number 3, Lux from Rosalia. Number 2, Fancy That from Pink Panthers. And number 1, my favorite album of 2025, Let God Sort 'Em Out by Clips. Let me know what your favorite albums were of the year. And as for my honorable mentions, of course, I already mentioned the AJ Tracy album, which I like quite a bit. I think the late-breaking Nas and DJ Premier album from this December, you know, just last week, was quite tremendous as well. Little Sims, another good record from her. I gotta give Addison Rae some love for certainly exceeding expectations with that debut record. In terms of most disappointing, I had a few that jumped out to me. The Underachievers, big fan of them, rap duo out of New York, really did not have the energy level I was expecting. I felt that was pretty underwhelming from them. Tate McRae, her album, I thought was completely flat and uninteresting. And then Jackson Wang's Magic Man 2, I thought was a pure disappointment compared to the greatness of the first Magic Man. Like, this did not compare in the slightest. I thought it was quite poor. But let me know, what are your favorite albums of the year? What were your honorable mentions? What were you disappointed by? What jumped out to you? What did I leave off? Let me know. All right, that's going to do it for my top 10 albums of the year. Let's now move on to my top 10 songs of the year. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with my top 10 songs of 2025. This list, of course, will be independent of my album list. There will be no artist crossover between the two, so make sure you check out that album list for more of my favorite music of the year. I also have my top 10 K-pop songs on the list, which also will not overlap with this top 10 songs list overall. So let's get into it. Number 10 for me is Elizabeth Taylor from Taylor Swift. I actually found myself higher on the Taylor Swift album, The Life of a Showgirl, than most people. I thought it was a broadly pretty successful return to pop convention for Taylor, even if it maybe doesn't reach the lyrical highs of some of her past work. And to me, Elizabeth Taylor was just the stickiest pop song of the bunch. You know, it's not quite the biggest hit. You know, I think Ophelia has certainly taken on a larger life. But to me, Elizabeth Taylor, particularly how that chorus works, the way that like piano key breakdown hits at that moment, I thought that was a really fun song. And I think the concept kind of worked for Taylor here. So definitely the best moment of the year for me with Taylor's music. And I quite liked it. Number 9 for me is Rockin' by Shoreline Mafia. This has a great sample, perhaps my favorite sample of the year, and that, of course, is Connie's Funky Little Beat from 1986. And to take that sample of all things and put it into a bouncy LA rap track from Shoreline Mafia actually worked better than I would have ever imagined. You know, I think Shoreline Mafia, since they've reconvened, right, OGZ and Phoenix Flexin coming back together to form a duo for Shoreline. It was previously a larger group. Now they're back together as a duo, and they're certainly better together. I think a song like this is just great. I think the sampling, the production on this is perfect. And OGZ and Phoenix, they sound great. I loved listening to them flex. It's just great party music. But the fact that they had such a stellar and intentional sample to complete the song, I think it really brought it home for me. It's a song I listen to a ton. Number 8 for me is Back to the Go from Chance the Rapper featuring Vic Mensa. Chance's comeback mixtape Starline was I think a lot more successful than his previous album, The Big Day. He's not all the way back musically, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And the biggest highlight for me was Back to the Go, which really felt like a classic throwback chance song with that Chicago influence. Hearing him collab with Vic Mensa again after all this time was really cool to me as a fan of both of them for such a long time. And yeah, I think also story-wise, mature, the mature subject matter that what they're getting into. I think it was, a pretty good example of what we can ask from both of them moving forward. So I like the song quite a bit. Frankly, I found the song pretty under-remarked upon overall. I think it was kind of obviously one of the best songs off Starline. Number 7 for me is Gorgeous from Doja Cat. To me, the Doja Cat album V was pretty good, pretty solid. Didn't make my album list, of course, but the best song on that album to me was really obviously Gorgeous, because this is simply put like a classic example of Doja Cat's talents, both her rap talents, her pop talents, her ability to sing, her ability to be an MC. I think it all comes together in a really great way on this track. And I think it's just a great example of Doja Cat doing everything she does and doing all of it well together. So big fan of the track. Number 6 for me is Cry for Me from The Weeknd. Overall, I found The Weeknd's Hurry Up Tomorrow, which released at the very beginning of the year, to be a disappointing album when compared to The Weeknd's high standards. It was by no means bad. It just wasn't as interesting to me as his last few records. But Cry for Me and also Wake Me Up in particular were the two songs that really grabbed me for being reminiscent of old Weeknd, but also having that production flair and that general excitement as the song progressed that I associate with some of the best Weeknd songs. In the case of Cry for Me, I think just lyrically, subject matter wise, it works like a good Weeknd song, but the chopping down and slurring and slowing and reverbing of his vocals at the end of the song, I love the way the song plays with pitch at the end, and I think it really brings the song home. And I did find myself revisiting the song plenty, even if ultimately I felt like the album kind of came and went. Number 5 for me is Mixed Emotions from Ty Dolla $ign featuring Travis Scott and Leon Thomas. This song knocked me out when I first heard it. And I didn't end up reviewing the Ty album, Tycoon. I just kind of skimmed around through it. But Mixed Emotions really impressed me because I loved how the three artists were really in concert here. You have Ty Dolla $ign using auto-tune, right? He Ty Dolla $ign's a singer himself, right? He's an R&B guy. He doesn't need auto-tune. He doesn't use it too frequently. But to hear him be on auto-tune, and particularly the same, pitch of auto-tune that Travis Scott would usually use. So it's effectively Ty making a Travis song on his own album and having it work really well. I like Ty's performance. I think the way Travis drops into that feature is great. Some of the best stuff Travis has done in ages, it feels like. And then Leon Thomas comes in, also using this same level of auto-tune, something that he doesn't normally do either. And he just gives a tour de force feature. His verse is a little longer than the Travis one, and he crushes, and this was a big year for Leon Thomas, right? Of course, Mutt was a massive track. He got a ton of Grammy attention, more than expected, right? We'll find out how he does in a few weeks. But I think this was honestly the best performance of the year from Leon Thomas. But I think Ty Dolla $ign, he does not get outclassed on his own song. I think all three of them really bring it. And this was perhaps one of the biggest surprises of the year for me. And another big surprise for me would be my number 4 pick, Drake, with Die Trying. Drake giving us Sexy Songs for You in the beginning of the year, collab album with Party Next Door. 2 songs really stood the test of time for me from that release. Of course, everyone knows Nokia, which is a big track, certainly worthy of making a top 10 list. It's on other people's top 10 lists. Great song for me, of course, an honorable mention. But Die Trying for me was very revelatory because this was Drake, for the first time, basically making like a sung folk song. I was quite taken back by what type of song this is, like genre-wise, right? It's not a traditional R&B song either. The presence of the guitar on here, the acoustic nature. This is just a different mode melodically that Drake has really ever done. And I think the sound-wise, the instrumentation-wise really jumped out to people. And also lyrically, I thought it was Drake at some of his most mature, frankly. We know Drake can certainly come across as immature and stuck in his ways song to song. But frankly, I thought this was some of the best soul-bearing Drake has done in some time. And it was particularly cool to hear, obviously given everything that happened the previous year with Drake and Kendrick. So shout out Die Trying. Frankly, I think this was actually underhyped. Man, number 3 for me is Come and Go from Yeat. Wow. I had not been digging Yeat his last few records. He'd been fine. but I had not been super invested in the Rage music developments, right? And of course, we had a big Playboi Carti album this year, I Am Music. Evil Jordan is a honorable mention of sorts for me as well. But when Yeat released that short mixtape, I want to say in August this year, and I first heard Come and Go, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is like when Yeat released Money So Big. Like, this is when I got excited about him in the first place, right? This is when I was like, oh, I see the board. I understand why people are so connected with this style of rap right now. Absolute titanic banger. I think the song is incredible. It's so catchy. It speaks to Yeat's simple yet effective charisma. Beat goes. I think the chorus goes. I just love the energy level of the song. I revisited it constantly. I think it's excellent. It's my favorite rap song of the year, which is not something I would have expected to say at the beginning of the year. Number 2 for me is Relationships from Haim. Now, I was not expecting to have a Haim song on my list. I appreciate what Haim does, but their general style of music, their general genre, not usually in my wheelhouse. But Relationships, I think, really grabbed me just because I thought the songwriting on this song was absolutely spectacular. And in the guitar line, we know Haim can strum a guitar in a great way, but I think the guitar line here just really carries the track. And I think the way it kind of uplifts and crescendos with its chorus, really tremendous song. I found this catchier than I would have ever expected and revisited it a lot. I think it's really great. One of my favorite Haim songs ever, frankly, to be honest. Certainly my favorite in several records. And lastly, my number 1 song of 2025 is Ashake's Badman Gangsta featuring Tia Cola. I've had Afrobeats artist in my top 10 before, at number 1 before. I had 2022, I had Burna Boy's Last Last as my number 1 song of the year, which of course I stand by. I was not expecting to have Ashake on my list just because I haven't been the biggest listener of his before, right? He had an album last year that was really well liked. But when I heard this is a loose single that came out in the summer, Badman Gangsta, it's not even that long of a song, but I was really knocked out by, I think, just the emotion that really carries with the singing in this track. And it features Tia Cola, who's an up-and-coming French rapper who I had previously been aware of from his work with the British rapper Dave, of course, who I love. Tia Cola fits the song really well. He's able to sing, frankly, more than rap on the track and meet Ashake's vibe. But I think it's just really just kind of a great duet, great energy level. There's just enough background vocal to really grab me. If you know my taste, it's something that often really excites me. I think, having a somber nature but still kind of uplifting as a track overall just really spoke to me, and I found myself listening to the song quite a bit. So talk about a surprise, but Badman Gangsta, Ashake, Tia Cola, that's my number 1 song of the year. So before getting into my honorable mentions, I'll just recap here my top 10 songs of 2025. Number 10, Elizabeth Taylor by Taylor Swift. Number 9, Rockin' by Shoreline Mafia. Number 8, Back to the Go by Chance the Rapper featuring Vic Mensa. Number 7, Gorgeous by Doja Cat. Number 6, Cry For Me by The Weeknd. Number 5, Mixed Emotions by Ty Dolla $ign featuring Travis Scott and Leon Thomas. Number 4, Die Trying by Drake. Number 3, Come and Go by Yeat. Number 2, Relationships by Haim. And number 1, my best song of 2025, Badman Gangsta from Ashake featuring Tia Cola. Let me know what your favorite songs of the year were as well. And for honorable mentions, of course, a lot of honorable mentions reflect, the album list. I separate the list so that we don't just repeat all the same artists, but of course my number 1 album, Clips, so FICO, Ace Trumpet, So Be It, tons of songs I love on there. Pink Panther's Fancy That, of course Tonight, basically every song on that album, Romeo, all those are honorable mentions. Lady Gaga's Abracadabra, AJ Tracy's Crush with Georgia Smith, Playboi Carti's Evil Jordan, Central C's Must Be, Speed Racer from Justin Bieber, Swag, specifically his deluxe reissue of Swag. I love that track. That song is awesome and should be a lot bigger. Childlike Things from FKA Twigs and Northwest of all people. Zen from Jenny. Of course, make sure you check out my top 10 K-pop songs of the year for 10 more of my favorite tracks. And also check out that top 10 albums list for more of my view of music this year. All right, that's going to do it for my top 10 songs of the year. Now let's move on to my top 10 K-pop songs of the year. There's no overlap between these two lists. And let me know what you think. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with my top 10 K-pop songs of 2025. I listened to over 50 K-pop albums this year. course, most of those are on the shorter EP/mini album side of things. K-pop doesn't release full-length albums all too often, but I listen to 50, full releases as well as numerous other random one-off singles and whatnot. And I'm going to go through my top 10 songs of the year. All of these songs are on projects that I did a full review of when it was released, so make sure you check that out if you're looking for a bit of a deeper dive on that project overall. I'm going to try and keep it brief here as we go through the 10 songs. I'll also mention some honorable mentions of mine, some songs that didn't quite make the cut at the end. For this list, I'm only picking one song per group to just make the list a little bit more interesting here. Of course, please leave a comment. Let me know what your favorite songs of the year were. If you liked my ranking, if you didn't like my ranking, tell me what was off or right. Just let me know what your favorite songs were as well. So coming in at number 10, I have We Go Up by Baby Monster. Of course, Baby Monster, the nascent but rapidly rising girl group from YG Entertainment. They have become incredibly popular right away as they've concluded their second year as a group here publicly, but I've often struggled with their consistency as a group. I think they're pretty up and down as they make different types of songs. I think they make songs that are really quite poor, such as Hot Sauce, such as Click Clack, stuff that I find really grating. But I've always been intrigued by Baby Monster because I think the group overall is quite talented vocally, and I just think with better direction from the label, I think they would really take off and just make much better music than they're currently making. However, they did release a song this year that I really enjoyed, and that would be, of course, the title track, We Go Up. And the reason I like this song so much is it really puts the hip-hop bona fides of Baby Monster on full display. I love the way the song starts right off with Ruka and Asa rapping. Of course, they're the rappers of the group. They have good flow, and when they're on a song that is a good match for them, I really enjoy listening to them as, hip hop within a K-pop song. I think they do a really good job at that. And I think energy-wise, this song is also just really enjoyable. I think all the other members make a really strong impression, and it's one of those kind of up-tempo bangers that I've really appreciated. Now, I'm not expecting Baby Monster to continue to make very rap-forward stuff in the future, but if they do, I prefer it to be a song like this and not something like Click Clack, which is just really poor flow-wise. Number 9 for me is GOT7's Python. This is probably like the first really good K-pop track of the year, given the early release date this had. And for a while, I thought this was the best song that had come out, until more stuff did eventually release, of course. And GOT7, they, of course, occupy an interesting space in K-pop at this point because they are doing their own thing, independent, and they'll break off and do their own solo work, but they'll come together as a group, and they control that direction. And I think this song was just exactly what I'd want from a mature group like that. I think the vocal melodies of that pre-chorus and that chorus are just incredibly sticky, and the group's singing abilities are well established at this point. So I just found it really catchy and really smooth as well. And unfortunately, Jackson Wang, he did release a solo project later in the year, Magic Man 2, and that was actually one of my most disappointing K-pop albums of the entire year. I just felt it was so unlike all the strengths he had shown on the first Magic Man solo album. So that was quite disappointing to me, but I was very thankful that the GOT7 release this year, Winter Heptagon, went really well, and Python's the clear highlight from it. Number 8 for me is Sweet as Sin from 10 off his solo album Stunner. Man, I had a lot of time for this 10 album that came out back in March. In general, I think it was a really great year for male soloists. I'll mention some more of those on the list in the honorable mentions, but male K-pop soloists had a great year, I think. And 10, man, I thought this album was so catchy, it was so fun, and was so upbeat the entire time, and I was really struck with 2 songs from this, Enough for Me and Sweet as Sin. And I went back and forth throughout the year of which of those 2 songs I had in this top 10. I always had at least one of them. I ended up switching it to Sweet as Sin, but I really like both of those songs. Man, I just think vocally, there's a great catchiness to it. I think that's a general theme of mine, is that I really latch on to the more boppier type of stuff. But I think 10, who's not exactly celebrated as like the most spectacular vocalist in the NCT umbrella, I think these songs were a great use of his talents and abilities, and I think the production really matched that. So these are just, I think, really bouncy, boppy songs. And Sweet as Sin, I think just the chorus was just a little bit stickier, just a little bit better written. And that's what, took it over the top for me. And I think overall, this album Stunner is probably one of the most underrated, K-pop solo releases of the year. Number 7 for me is Chill from Lisa. Of course, we got all the Blackpink solo albums between December of last year and early 2025. And the Lisa album, I largely struggled with, and I think it's just more so about like the artistry that Lisa currently displays. I think a lot of it isn't necessarily for me. And again, listen to my review of the whole album for more on that. However, there was one song that was a clear, obvious highlight for me, and of course that was Chill. And the reason I like that song so much is I think that's just like really great, like pure pop songwriting. Obviously, Can't Read My Face, Call Me Mona Lisa is a banger lyric for Lisa to have, but I think overall the production in this song very much reminded me of like 2000s Timbaland. I think the chorus in and of itself is just a kind of a 10 out of 10 pop chorus. Again, very catchy. The drum tempo underneath this song really moves. Definitely a song I revisited all the time just because of how just lively I think it was, and just again super pure bop. So this was the obvious highlight for me for a Lisa album that overall I didn't care for too much. Number 6 for me is Different from LE SSERAFIM. Now maybe I'm breaking the rules here because this is of course a Japanese song, albeit from a K-pop group. This to me was the obvious best song LE SSERAFIM put out this year. I like this song leagues more than say their most recent release Spaghetti, which did not make my list or my honorable mentions. A good amount of my songs have a fair amount of English. That's a general trend with K-pop, so it's not like this is a pure Japanese song by any means. But Different to me really gets to the core of LE SSERAFIM's strengths, and when they're at their best, it's making a song like this. Unsurprisingly, the Chaewon vocals are front and center because it was a Japanese song. There's more Kazuha than usual, but man, I think it has a really fun throwback energy. It's not as like in your face pure pop, but there's a lightness, there's an airiness to the song. I think the chorus is tremendous, and those verses, especially from Chaewon, I think those just flow really well. I really enjoy like the kind of pitter patter of that singing, but to me this is like a great showcase for the general appeal of LE SSERAFIM when they're at their best, and I'm hoping we get more of this next year. And the B-side from this release, Kawaii, also I liked quite a bit. That's on my honorable mentions. Now at number 5, I have Takedown from Twice. I had to have Twice on the list because Twice, I would say, had their best calendar year between December 2024 and December 2025 with that Strategy release at the end of last year, into This Is For, into that Japanese album, into their relationship with K-pop Demon Hunters via this song Takedown, the Chaeyoung solo album. Twice was everywhere last year, and of course touring and being public, the Victoria's Secret fashion show performance and everything that lit up on social media. Twice was pretty omnipresent. I think they've really never been bigger than they are right now, and the music to me is as good as it's ever been as well. I've been really connecting with a ton of it. I think This Is For is a honorable mention for me. The Geo solo song ATM is incredible. Frankly, maybe I should have put that on my list. I love that track. But Takedown, I wanted to put this here because I think this was my favorite pure group song from them, and it's really only a trio song. Of course, Geo, Chaeyoung, and Jonghyun. It's not the full group, but I love the energy of this, like Twice doing a rap track. I love Chaeyoung's like style of rap and when it fits into Twice songs, which is not super frequently, but I do like it when we get it. And this is kind of the best example of that this year. And I think it's just a really fun song. I love the energy of it. I love its use within the movie, of course. I definitely prefer this version from Twice versus the Huntrix recorded version that you actually hear in the movie. This song was only heard in the credits, the Twice version. But when I heard this, in the lead up to the movie coming out, it did legitimize the movie to me, even if I didn't seek out the movie right when it first came out. But like this had caught my attention right away. It's like, oh, Twice is affiliated with that movie. That is interesting. And I think the song certainly backed it up. It was really cool when they performed it at Lollapalooza. Number 4 for me is Style by Hearts to Hearts. Hearts to Hearts completely snuck up on me. I think they're, without a shadow of a doubt, like the rookie K-pop group of the year, but they really came out of nowhere for me. I didn't have any hype for them, leading up. But unsurprisingly, as the new rookie girl group from SM Entertainment, they did in fact deliver as the year went on. I think there was a lot of songs you could have picked to represent them on a top 10 list, right? I think I liked Focus. I really liked The Chase, Pretty Please. All these songs alongside my selection here, of course, Style. Man, the pop songwriting capabilities for this group are like really impressive. There is some really sticky pop in their music. And Style to me is my favorite of all of them because I think this is just like the best recent example of like the traditional like K-pop like girl crush style of K-pop music. That's obviously become a bit played out, and a lot of the trends have been shifting kind of away from that sound, right? More in terms of the kind of ethereal, vibey, hype type of sound that, of course, is best exemplified by someone like New Jeans, right? Hearts to Hearts is not doing that, but man, I think like the writing here is just so hard to deny. I think these are just like really well constructed songs, and the energy level is there. The production really matches that. Vocally, they're not the most impressive group because they're not being asked to do too much vocally. This is more about like the whole package and construction of the song with how sticky it is, how those lyrics work, how those beats fit in. These are really easy songs to just have on repeat all the time, and Style is my favorite of them. Number 3 for me is Zen from Jennie. Now, Jennie had an amazing year in 2025. Her album Ruby, her debut solo album, will be on my top 10 albums list. There's a spoiler for you. So I'll be talking more about the album in the aggregate as well, but I had to pick one of her songs for my top 10 list here. The biggest song of the bunch was Like Jenny. I really was a fan of Extrawl as well as With the IE Way Up, but my favorite song, at least this song that I found was the most impressive. It's definitely not the song I listened to the most. I definitely listened to those other ones I just mentioned more. But the song that most impressed me was, I believe it was the second single after Mantra, and that was Zen. And this song really knocked me out with a absolutely, I think, instant classic music video. Like, to me, it's the clear K-pop music video of the year, the rare uber conceptual K-pop video that's not super obvious and rote and similar in structure and set design to most K-pop music videos you get. The Zen video is not that. Very, very stylish, very out there, very sci-fi. It's really cool. But the song itself really knocked me out as like, oh, wait a minute, I might have a feeling of where this album's going to go. And that actually bore out with Ruby, where Jennie is invoking Rihanna, and I think the chorus of this song, the nobody lyric that she has, the way she gives you that line, it's like, oh, wow, this is Riri right now. And I never really expected Jennie to go down that route, but man, she crushed. And I think this song is a banger, but also very unique and very unlike a lot of other K-pop stuff. Now, again, this album is almost exclusively English. I think Jennie made this album in LA a lot of the time. So it's like, is it like a pure K-pop album in the same way like was Rosé's solo album? Rosie, was that really a pure K-pop album? Not really. There's definitely a lot of Western influence on this. But K-pop star, we'll take it. Number 2 for me is Ghost by Stray Kids. Of course, Stray Kids gave us their most recent album, Karma, earlier this year, which was a big highlight for me. Overall, I mean, Stray Kids has been near the top of my lists over the last few years. I think they've had some of the best years in K-pop recently. I think they were my number 1 group of 2023. I really liked S-Class that year, and they had a strong year last year, but they really came roaring back in 2025. And I was really caught between 2 songs to pick from this album for my top 10. It was not the lead single, Ceremony, but it was actually Ghost and Halftime. To me, both those songs are like the best pure Stray Kids. Like, that is what's exciting about them as a group, how they function sonically as a group with several members. I think the choruses of both those songs are incredible. I think the production and energy level on those songs is tremendous. I think Halftime in particular is incredibly underrated, and I almost picked it. But I ended up picking Ghost just because I think it's just a little bit tightly wound. I think it's just a little bit stronger of the writing package, but they're both really great tracks. Amidst the BTS hiatus, Stray Kids has more than stepped up and been a really exciting male group. And number 1 for me, this was really obvious ever since I heard this song in the middle of the year. My number 1 K-pop song of 2025 is Your Idol from K-pop Demon Hunters. Now, K-pop Demon Hunters being on my list is not inherently a surprise, and the most celebrated song from that film, the biggest song, the most successful one, the biggest chart topper of them all, was of course Golden, which is a very good song, of course. And there was tons of good songs, tons of songs you could have picked, tons of songs that really stuck around on the charts and made this a incredibly impressive and unforeseen phenomenon, right? what it sounds like, Free, Golden, how it's done. But to me, Your Idol was that song. And of course, this song was co-written by EJ, but not performed by her. This was performed by Andrew Choi, the voice of Gino in the movie, alongside some of the other guys who, voiced the rest of the Saja boys. And I really like this song because it has, I think, just a really fun kind of throwback energy to it. I find the hauntingness, I find the group chant vocals, I find those group vocal harmonies. All that is really catchy. I think it's a song that worked incredibly well in the context of the movie. Like the scene when you hear this song, excels. But it's just a really easy song to revisit. It's a really catchy song on its own merits, and that's why I found myself going back to it all the time. It was, in fact, my number one most played song of 2025. If you can compare this to a more traditional K-pop song, I think a lot of the kind of chanty chorus vocals that you get on Your Idol, very reminiscent of EXO's Mama from, several years ago at this point. I would love to hear more of this type of stuff in the future. Now, as I said, my list is, one artist per, entry here. I do have 2 K-pop Demon Hunter songs on my list, but I felt I could get away with that because I was representing TWICE via Takedown and then representing K-pop Demon Hunters via Your Idol. So I'm happy with that. So that's my top 10. We'll get into my honorable mentions in just a second. And just the recap here are my top 10 K-pop songs of 2025. Number 10, We Go Up by Baby Monster. Number 9, Python by GOT7. Number 8, Sweet as Sin by 10. Number 7, Chill by Lisa. Number 6, Different by LE SSERAFIM. Number 5, Takedown by TWICE. Number 4, Style by Hearts to Hearts. Number 3, Zen by Jennie. Number 2, Ghost by Stray Kids. And my number 1 K-pop song of 2025, Your Idol by K-pop Demon Hunters. Leave a comment, let me know what your favorite songs of the year were. And of course, now let's just jump into some of those honorable mentions here. I mentioned some of these, but K-pop Demon Hunters, shout out basically all the songs. They all were really well. I like Soda Pop a bunch. Heart to Heart, I already mentioned Pretty Please, and The Chase, I like those. Geo, ATM, solo track, love that. Wavy, liked big bands, big fan of them. Looking forward to more Wavy in the future. Rose, I enjoyed Messy from the F1 soundtrack. I thought that was pretty fun. Mark, that solo album, very strong. I liked Phraxia and Raincouver the most. From Chaeyoung, I found Shoot very sticky, very catchy. Jungha, I like Stress. IVE, I like XOXZ. And Heartbeats as well. I mentioned Stray Kids Halftime. AT's Lemon Drop. That was one of my toughest cuts. Really catchy song. I listened to that one a ton. Also like their song Masterpiece. I liked Hunter from Key. I mentioned LE SSERAFIM's Kawaii. TWICE. I also really enjoyed Right Hand Girl a ton. And Hypen's Outside I thought was quite good. Burnin' Up from Meow I liked quite a bit. They showed me, I think, a lot this year. Looking forward to hearing their continued growth next year. 17, I really like Bad Influence, and I also like from 17 Mingyu's solo song Shake It Off. Baekhyun, I thought No Prom was really good. I mentioned 10 Sweet as Sin as my choice, and then Enough for Me was my tough cut. Karina from aespa, I loved her solo track Good Stuff this year. 2 banger solo tracks in back-to-back years between this and Up from last year. So really good stuff. In terms of my most disappointing K-pop albums of the year, I have 3 in particular that really stood out to me. Number 1 is aespa's Rich Man. And it pains me to say that because aespa was by far my number 1 K-pop act of 2024. I thought they were absolutely incredible with several releases throughout the year, both English and Japanese, that really hit solo stuff as well. They crushed. And I thought Rich Man just really missed the mark and did not keep that momentum. LE SSERAFIM, Spaghetti, it's only like a single release, not the biggest deal, but I thought that was quite poor. And then Kiss of Life 224, it just did not hit the same. They had an amazing 2024, second really only to aespa, and they also did not keep that going at all this year. So we'll see what happens with them. But let me know, what are your favorite K-pop songs of the year, your favorite K-pop albums of the year? What stood out to you? What did I leave off that I shouldn't have? Let me know. Leave a comment. And for more music reviews and more K-pop reviews, including reviews of every album as it comes out, when it comes out, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, that's going to do it for my best music of the year. Let me know what you thought of these lists, what jumped out to you the most. Of course, again, come back for my top 10 TV and movies lists as well, and I'll see you next week.